I'll never stop enjoying cartoons. As long as they're well made and entertaining, that is. My current favorites that are still airing new episodes as of the time of this video are The Amazing World of Gumball, Sonic Boom, SpongeBob, DuckTales, the reboot, and Welcome to the Wayne when it starts airing again. Garfield, on the other hand, has been my favorite cartoon character since my 3rd and 4th grade teachers brainwashed me. And on June 19th, 2018, he celebrated his 40th anniversary. For 40 years, he's been on the back of cars, kicking Odie off the table, napping wherever he can, and eating his favorite dish... Lasagna, anyone? So it felt right for me to go back and look at one of his most well-received games. I would have said well-known games, but... Get out of here, you! The history on this title is actually much deeper than you would expect. The game itself is done by Sega Interactive. That's crazy to me! That's like if Nintendo developed a Snoopy game. But it turns out there's a big reason for this connection. Jim Davis, Garfield's creator, actually knew the then Sega president of America, Tom Kalinske. Mr. Davis even wanted to do a Garfield game for quite a while, but felt that the time just wasn't right. Once that problem was solved, he invested his time into the game and based it off of the special, Garfield His 9 Lives, while him and his team also did the sprite work themselves. I love it when licensed games get heavy involvement from their creators and or team. It gives it that extra feeling of care, just like how Aladdin on the Genesis had sprite animation from the movie's animators. And before you say anything, I lost my copy years ago. Probably lost in the same place as my Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse game. Think the lesson is over? Guess again! The Genesis version had 3 levels cut from the final version. Surprisingly, you could still access them, but only if you were subscribed to the Sega channel. And I really wish I knew about this feature back then. It allowed subscribers to play demos of games and get extra content, as well as download and play games for a limited time. Man, Sega was so ahead of its time back then. I mean, just look at that great name! But it came with drawbacks, like this being the only way anyone in the USA could play Mega Man The Wily Wars officially. What was that game? Mega Man 1, 2, and 3 with 16-bit enhancement and extra features and modes. Why did America get screwed out of that? According to everyone else on the internet, the Sega channel was the only way to access those cut levels. And since this is when the internet was in diapers and recording gameplay footage was extremely limited, it's no surprise that images and footage of those levels are basically non-existent. Don't get confused though, there is a Game Gear version that has 2 of them called Bonehead the Barbarian and Slobber, but I'm very confident that they are only related by look and name alone, not level design. I actually do have a Game Gear and the version of the game, but the last time I played it was when Sega still made consoles and mine just kinda gave up. And since it's been so long, I really can't remember much about the game, except that I like the bonus round where you destroy as much as you can in the house to get extra lives. There was also a PC port called Garfield in TV Land that had an enhanced soundtrack, and the other cut level known as Alien Landscape. Based on footage I've seen, I don't think I've missed much. I also noticed on the back of the case you can see a level of Casablanca that is clearly not in the game, and to the left of it is apparently an old version of the HUD screen. I find this so mixed-matched and kinda lazy. Garfield would be proud. There was supposedly a port plan for the Sega 32X, but even I don't have the system, and the plan was dropped without question. The reception for this game back then was basically a nice warm meh, saying that the game looked faithful to the comic and characters, but that was its strongest point. As for me, I had rented this game as a kid, but just had to have it for obvious reasons. The game holds a special place in my heart, but getting older and developing a more critical eye, the wrinkles start to become more and more noticeable. One evening, Garfield was watching TV, gets spooked by Odie, the TV breaks his fall, he attempts to repair it with the outcome looking questionable, throws the extra parts away, they accidentally form a creature called Glitch that traps Garfield into the TV, and from there Garfield tries to find his way back home. It's a game based on a comic strip character, simplicity was the best way to go. Right before you start a new game, you see a screen that shows you the items, and this is so self-explanatory on what they do that we can skip this. Your adventure is a basic point A to point B 2D platformer with health, lives, continues, checkpoints, and enemies that touch you cause damage. But thankfully there's no knockback, just a pretty well done animation. Though it can be hard to see under 30 frames per second, and the game looks a little blurry when it's recorded at 60. Beyond your typical walking, jumping, and looking up and down to get a better view of your surroundings, Garfield can melee attack with a weapon of that world, as well as throw projectiles when he has ammo. A lot of his other abilities are pretty specific to certain areas like edge grabbing, rope pulling, pushing, using the torch to activate switches, and... You know, I can't remember what this is actually called. Come on, stupid brain, work with me! Most of the enemies typically fall into 2 categories.
I like standing in one place and throwing.
Basically 80% of every Widow main that's been on my team.
Alright, you were not the Widowmaker, were you?
No, I was the Reinhardt.
God bless you.
And
Am I annoying enough for you yet?
that's not a joke. Most levels, if not all of them, have an enemy that will fly towards you every few seconds. The worst part, whenever you get hit mid-jump, you quickly lose your jump, making some parts a bit frustrating. But at least if you're doing this, then they can't attack you, so that's nice of them to be patient. The bosses aren't something to write home about. There are definitely some to take note of, but for the most part they are pretty easy to exploit. Except I can't understand what exactly it is that causes Vampire Odie to go into his coffin. My best advice is just to get rid of the bats and then hit the flying bonehead after he dives. The 5 TV-themed worlds you'll trick through are the Graveyard and Battle of Count Slobulus Castle, the Boat Ride and Jungle Exploration and the Revenge of Orangebeard, the prehistoric setting of Cave Cat, the Maze of Casablanca, and the Traps and the Curse of Cleopatra. As you may have noticed, in each of the level themes, Garfield has a slightly different look that blends him into the worlds a little better, which is a very nice touch. The Revenge of Orangebeard and Cave Cat are the only ones to have 2 levels in them, a boss at the end of every world along with a hub world connecting the levels, and the final boss. After defeating a world boss, you'll get this cutscene and this bonus round where you try to collect enough Pookies, Garfield's teddy bear, to win either an extra life or a continue. And if you collected the mallet in the levels and clear them, you get this whack-a-mole game that I'll be going over greatly in the next section, which we'll transition to now. Take a look at those sprites and animation! This really felt like I was watching an episode of Garfield and Friends. It's the little things like his idle animation where he looks at you and wonders why you're not doing anything, or does his little tap dance with a sound effect. The sound is also of a high quality on a system that is infamous for having bad sound quality. Most of the sound effects have that cartoony sense to them without sounding too grainy and staticky. Just listen to some of them. There are some high-pitched bleeps and whatnot, but overall it's A+ stuff. The soundtrack is also something to behold. To me, it tries its absolute best to come off as actual instruments. It doesn't work, but you almost get that feeling. And if you have the PC port, then you get an even better version of the music, though it cuts itself off before it loops. Here, have some comparisons between the two. As far as bosses go, there's really only 2 that I like. One of them being the final boss for the music, obviously, and because his attacks get harder to dodge the more hits he takes. It's kind of a personal challenge every time I play this game to try and not get hit. Never succeeded. And there's this guy who chucks bombs at you, but some of them can be picked up and thrown right back at him. I normally don't like bosses that feel like they take forever, but I thought this was okay and gave a sense of, have a taste of your own medicine!
So what flavor is it? Bombs.
Something I recently discovered are the cheat codes. Not the passwords that help you skip levels, but cheat codes that can be put in the pause screen. There's a number of interesting codes that can make the game somewhat fun to break. My favorites are the debug mode, skipping the levels, and 99 ammo, which I tested on that boss mentioned earlier, and wow, that was surprisingly satisfying! Speaking of... I present to you the best whack-a-mole game I've ever played. Every time it tells you a random character not to hit, and in order to win, you have to hit all the letters that spell Garfield while hitting everything else but that one exception. Missing even one character ends the bonus round, so you have to be quick while making sure you don't accidentally hit the one you weren't supposed to. In case you were wondering, that's button A, button B, and button C, and pressing up takes you to the row above them. Fun fact, if you had the controller that has the X, Y, and Z buttons, then they would hit the top row. I don't even care about the reward because I hardly ever died in this game, so continues were worthless to me. I wanted to win because I enjoyed the challenge of paying attention and responding in a quick manner. There were a few times where I would take this game to a friend's house for a sleepover and we'd compete to see who could do the best. Trust me, this is really addictive. Just wish the rest of the game could be this enjoyable. Oh, this hurts. This really hurts. Getting older has caused me to see some major flaws with this game, mainly the level design. It's just sloppy with what it did with the enemy placements and hazards. There are certain spots where it's next to impossible to avoid damage unless you have great aim, timing, and memorization. But even with so many cheap shots fired at you like a good joke at EA, because that's still a thing, right? Health is all over the place. That may sound like it cancels out, but it just makes the earlier statement all the more true. There are even some checkpoints right next to the exit. Why? The first part of Orangebeard is the perfect example of this. You're on a small boat fighting off lots of enemies. Some even jump out at you. But there's so much health that you can't die unless you don't get them, don't attack, or stay in the water. What's the point in making a level where you'll take damage only to immediately recover from it? I know the target audience was kids and fans of the character alike, but let me remind you, this game was actually made by Sega! You kind of expect more from a former first-party developer and console maker at that time. The only real exception to this is the Curse of Cleopatra, which has puzzle elements, traps you can avoid if you pay attention, secret areas, and ducking actually has a use. I wish all the levels could feel this well thought out, but that's just a pipe dream. Some parts in the second act of Cave Cat have you question if you can make a jump or not because it's hard to see the platform you need to jump to, as well as some platforms that seem like you can jump on them, but you can't, and then you can, so communication between you and the level design feels somewhat confusing. Two levels in particular go for a gimmick to try and shake things up, but you quickly see them for what they are. The second stage in Orangebeard has you climb all the way to the top of the level, only for you to jump off in the top left corner and fall through the floor to the lower part where the exit can be found. At first glance, you have to wonder if that's what you're actually supposed to do. Yes, you see a 1-up in the corner indicating that jumping there is worth it, but what would happen if it's just a cruel joke and then you would lose all your progress? If you're playing on Kitty mode, there is a finger pointing to the direction you're supposed to go, so if you're ever confused, try playing on that mode first. But Casablanca is a level that will take your patience and rip it limb from limb the first time, and about a minute every other playthrough with memorization. It's a transporting maze level where going through doors takes you to other doors until you find the right one. I will say this, I'm glad it's not RNG, otherwise I would never play through this game from beginning to end, without that level skip code. But just to make sure I never forget and to help anyone else out, here's what you do. Go down the first manhole, go to the right until you see 3 paths, and take the one on the far right, or the third path, then head left past the fence, over the manhole, and through the door that's under the staircase near the end. Head up to the top of this building, and keep going rooftop to rooftop until you see a Pookie and ride the wrecking ball to the exit. There. May no one ever get lost on this stage again. The levels aren't the only parts to come off feeling so lackadaisical. 2 bosses in particular need special attention. Orangebeard looks almost identical to the other skeleton pirates. Beyond that, his fight feels somewhat, uninspired. You can either play it safe and dodge the attacks while chucking bombs at him from a distance, or you can just jump in the water and brute force him and then get the health that's there in case you need it. Then there's Slobber Asaurus Rex, the most infamous boss in the game because of a glitch, and no, that's not a pun of the main villain. I never knew bosses could rage quit, but you learn something new every day. The way to beat him is to send a boulder up to hit Not Green Odie to bring him down, then attack him and repeat, while also watching out for rocks that are caused by an erupting volcano, or an earthquake, I'm not sure. The problem is that Jolly Green Dummy can jump off the invisible wall and... Did he clear the level? The rocks won't fall anymore to hurt you, so you can't die and restart the boss fight, and for over 2 decades I thought this was a softlock and couldn't do a thing other than reset the game and put in the passcode to the next level. Until now. Thanks to those pause screen codes, you can enter the one that lets you skip to the next level. You know, the one I kept mentioning before? 2 things I wish I knew. One of them being this code years ago, and how this got past the game testers. I blame Heather, because if you can put in a code to put your name in the pause menu, then you could have used that time to test for this. Yeah, there are other testers, but your name is there, so it makes sense to blame you. So what do we have here? A game that has great presentation and care of the IP, but feels lacking and lazy in terms of level layouts and enemy placements. Not to mention the game is incredibly short. You can easily beat it in under an hour, which to be fair was common at the time, but when there are other platformers out there that are far more polished and have a longer lasting appeal, it kinda hurts buying it at full price. Which, yeah, I did do that. Now learn from my experience / mistake. I can see some thought put into the game, and the effort on sound and visuals can't be positively expressed enough. But the core of any game is the gameplay, and the level designs do take up a good chunk of that. It can be entertaining, and heck, I can still have some fun with those in-game codes, like practically skipping through Casablanca like it was nothing. But at the end of the day, there's little to come back to, other than that minigame. It lands at around a high 2 out of 5 and a low 3 out of 5. I can't tell if I'm being generous or biased, but honestly, what I think I'll recommend fits best, but only because it works at the time it came out. That's usually how I recommend games anyways, so I'll round up to the low. A 3 out of 5. Solid rental, buy it cheap. Very big warning for those that are photosensitive. The graveyard and the second boss have quick bright flashes. In fact, the second boss flashes up every time he takes a hit. Just a heads up. Okay, who is the rubber chicken? I get Irma, the coffee waitress, and Squeaks from the cartoon, but why this? Why not something like Binky the Clown? Just asking, no one in particular. Another nice touch was the little comic book that came with both the Genesis and the Game Gear version that felt like a personal thank you from Jim Davis. Just wish I had bought the game sooner than I did to qualify for that trivia quiz that was in the booklet. Another way to tell that there was stuff cut is that if you look at the title screen, you'll see a Viking helmet from Bonehead the Barbarian and a rocket ship from Alien Landscape. I'd really like to know just how long those levels were in the game before being cut. Using the debug code on the TV Hub World can even let you skip to levels out of their intended order. But be careful because they can also send you back to previous levels you've cleared. The PC port was also bundled in a Sonic Collection pack for the PC. Man, if my younger self knew about that at the time, I'd have overdosed on hype. In case you're wondering, no, there is no hard mode, and as far as some of the other pause screen codes like the Death Trap one, I have no idea what it does. I've tested it, I didn't notice a thing. Hey Sega, you want your Genesis Classic or whatever it's called to be a success? Put the Sega Channel stuff on there. Collectors will eat it up. Sorry this took longer than expected to finish, guys, but I've got other videos planned for the future, so don't worry about it. In the meantime, I'd like to thank Sliver and the Duke of Dorks for helping out with the thumbnail in the Discord channel, and I'd like to give a plug to Tataravancer Yo's 5 favorite casino levels in video games. I actually promised to plug his videos for quite a while now, and it's bothered me that it's taken this long to finally do it since they're pretty good. So check them out, and with all that said, I will see you guys in another video. Later, everyone!